Hello, this is Orion, Kilo Echo 7 Victor Lima Charlie with the Mesa Amateur Radio Club, Whiskey Mike 7 Romeo Charlie. And today we're going to be talking about repeater etiquette. Now, I'm going to be assuming that you already know about repeaters and how to access them, that you've got your radios set up and programmed properly, and that you've possibly have made one or two contacts on the repeater, if not more than that. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through a little bit of pet peeves and then how to do a simplex QSO as well as a normal QSO. So the very first pet peeve that I want to talk about, and this is one of my personal pet peeves, and quite honestly, it's one that everybody should be paying attention to anyways. It's called listen, listen, listen. I don't know how much I can stress that, but you've got to really pay attention to that. Listen, listen, listen. Before you even make a transmission on HF, VHF, UHF, it doesn't matter. The very first thing that you should be doing is listening, listening, listening. Here's the reason why. You might be interrupting another QSO that's already going on. If you just turn the radio on and you hear nothing, and automatically assume that nobody's using the repeater, you might end up interrupting an already ongoing conversation, and somebody had just basically simply put the microphone down to take a look at something, or you might have interrupted a public service event. Now, this has happened just recently on one of the events that I was with. The Net Control had just announced the fact that the repeater was in use, that it was being used as a public service event, and it was a directed net, and any and all users who wanted to utilize the repeater system should contact Net Control first prior to just assuming that they can utilize the repeater. What ended up happening is right after that, and I kid you not, it was probably like 30 seconds to 45 seconds later, somebody gets on there and just automatically puts their call sign out there. And we're right in the middle of an event. We could have been in the middle of an emergency situation, or some sort of priority situation where we were needing to use the repeater as much as possible for just specific stations or something like that. So don't just turn your radio on, grab a hold of the microphone, press the push to talk button, and put your call sign out there. It's kind of rude in a way, because it's just like walking into a room just announcing your name, and there's already other people in there having conversations and things of that nature. So always listen, listen, listen before you key up and transmit. The next little pet peeve of mine is kerchunking. All right, kerchunking is technically illegal because it's a unidentified transmission. FCC requires that you at least put your call sign out there, and then every 10 minutes or at the end of your conversation, put your call sign out there. Okay, so if you're kerchunking it, you're basically breaking that rule. Now, an occasional kerchunk to check and make sure that your radio is properly set up, or that it's properly tuned, or programmed, I can kind of get that. But if you're constantly just kerchunk, 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 it gets very annoying first to listen to, and then second off, it is illegal. So keep that in mind. So how to avoid kerchunking? Well, you got it programmed. Press the push to talk button and put your call sign out, just like if you were going to make an announcement, or if you were going to try to make a contact with somebody. You would press the push to talk, put your call sign out there, and hope that somebody else is coming back. Now, what you could do is press the push to talk and go Kilo Echo 7 Victor Lima Charlie, testing my radio setup, test 1 2 3, test out, KE7VLC, clear. That's an appropriate test of your system. This also ensures that first off, that you are actually able to key up the repeater for longer than just a couple seconds. As well as at the end of your transmission, the repeater will usually identify with a CW identifier or at least a squelch tone, which indicates that you've already made a good contact, that everything is all programmed up. You might also get somebody who might also call up and say, hey, listen, you're coming in crystal clear on that repeater. You're doing a very good job. Or they might come back and say, hey, your antenna's not doing a very good job, or you're not putting out enough power, or you're coming in very scratchy, or something of that nature. Please improve your signal. That gives you a little bit better understanding of exactly what your radio setup is like and what kind of issues you might have with it. The other issue with kerchunking is what if that repeater is on emergency power? A lot of these repeaters are up on mountaintops. They're not in cities, where they have constant power or anything of that nature. If they're up on a mountainside and there was a big snowstorm or a big ice storm, it might have inadvertently cut the power to that whole entire repeater site, which means now it's running either on battery backup or generators, or even solar power. In that case, when you kerchunk and kerchunk and kerchunk, not only is the repeater having to either drain its batteries, or the generator is going to have to start up really quick to absorb that extra power for the repeater to repeat your signal. But if you keep doing this over and over and over again, eventually those batteries will die out, or the generator will run out of fuel. Then what's going to happen in an emergency situation? So be mindful of that type of stuff. So now that you've got the little pet peeves out there done and over with, let's talk about how to do a simplex QSO. It's just like HF. You key up the radio. You put your call sign out there, CQ, CQ, CQ. This is Whiskey Mike 7 Romeo Charlie, Whiskey Mike 7 Romeo Charlie, calling CQ. There's nothing wrong with that. There's going to be some people who say, oh, that's not how it's properly done. You just have to throw your call sign out there. Still, that's the appropriate way of doing something. You could, and technically, legally, just put your call sign out there and see if anybody comes back. The other way to do a simplex contact is if you already know that somebody else is on the same simplex frequency as yourself, you could always put out their call sign along with your call sign. Whiskey Mike 7 Romeo Charlie, this is Kilo Echo 7 Victor Lima Charlie. That is an appropriate call. It allows everybody on that simplex frequency to know that, hey, I'm trying to reach Whiskey Mike 7 Romeo Charlie. I don't want to talk to anybody else. And I'm waiting for him to respond. Him or her, I should say. Now, on a normal QSO, on a repeater, essentially it's the same thing, except that you don't have to do the CQ, CQ, CQ. There's going to be people out there who sit there and complain about if you do the CQ, CQ, CQ. Personally, I'm not going to be offended by somebody, especially a new ham, getting on there going CQ, 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 this is so-and-so. Alright? So, with that in mind, just think about some of the little idiosyncrasies of normal everyday conversation, and you'll get a grasp as to what kind of etiquette you need to be paying attention to and be mindful of. This is Kilo Echo 7 Victor Lima Charlie for Whiskey Mike 7 Romeo Charlie. Out.